We will get started in just a few minutes. All right, good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are doing great today on this Wednesday morning. We are going to get started this morning with a quick webcast. I think if you guys want to go ahead, actually, hold on one second, everybody. I'll be back in one quick second. I need to chat with Alex. 1 second. Okay, welcome back, guys. I'm so sorry about that. Hopefully, those pop-ups will go away. Alex and Brittany are going to deal with that on the back end. So we are going to get started this morning with a webcast about creating simple dashboards using out-of-the-box web parts. So I'm going to be walking through a couple of slides, doing some demos. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat window, and I will be answering them as we go. So I'm excited to get started this morning. So a little bit about us. We are Planet Technologies, and so Planet Technologies, we have been a 6-time Microsoft Federal Partner of the Year, 5-time Microsoft State and Local Partner of the Year, as well as a 5-time Microsoft Windows Partner of the Year, and we're one of 35 Microsoft NSP partners in the U.S. We are consultants that love Microsoft, so we're constantly working with Microsoft product set, working with different organizations, helping them make the most of their investments. And so a lot of people have investments with Microsoft already, and we spend a lot of time helping them understand how can they get the most out of what they have already purchased. And so this webcast is related to SharePoint. How can you get the most out of SharePoint, and what can you do just using out-of-the-box techniques to really add some flair and some power to your SharePoint sites. And so I am Jennifer Ann Mason. I am the Director of Innovation and Strategic Solutions out at Planet, which means that I help Planet identify different solutions that we can bring to the market that really highlight the best of Planet and the best of Microsoft and can pull things together. So we have my contact information down here. I'm a 5-time Microsoft Office Servers and Services MVP. So I have some deep connections at Microsoft. I'm definitely a Microsoft girl. Hopefully some of you guys have seen me out in the community. I'm a big blogger, and I spend a lot of time on Twitter and different things like that. So I hope that I will get to see some of you guys out in that virtual SharePoint community that we all know and love. Okay, so getting started today, we're going to talk through the concept of simple dashboards. Now, what I like to tell people is I have an allergy to syntax and semicolons. So everything I'm going to be showing you guys today has to do with things you can do with just SharePoint out of the box. You're only able to do it by pointing and clicking and pulling pieces on web part pages and different things like that. We have no syntax, no semicolons, and no code. So today's session is going to be all about people with allergies to syntax and semicolons. Okay, so we're going to start with using SharePoint, using the content that we're storing inside of SharePoint to help tell a story. You can say, well, what kind of content is stored inside of SharePoint? Well, we have got task lists, we have document libraries, we have some of document libraries, project list, all sorts of details are stored inside of SharePoint, and we want to pull that together to tell a story. We want to do it in a simple way, pull together the simple to tell a great story. What I like to tell people is you can think about it in a simple formula, is that data plus context is going to lead to action. And so what you want to do is you want to give your data some context on the pages, and that's really the story that you're telling, and you want to drive people to action. And if you look at what that can mean, let's say we had a task list. What's the data? Well, the tasks, are our data. The tasks that we have to do are our data. Well, what's the context? Well, is it late? Is it due next week? Is it assigned to me? Is it assigned to somebody else? That's the context that we're looking at. And what is the action that we want to do? Well, we want to drive people to either finish their tasks, or we want to drive, maybe it's a manager, we want them to see who on their team still has tasks, and we want to drive the appropriate action of them working with those people to respond to those tasks. So one thing I've learned in all my time working with SharePoint is a lot of times people can give me 1 to 2 pieces of this formula. They can tell me the action that they need people to take, or they can tell me the context that they need to push the users in, but they're not necessarily thinking about it from this formula's perspective. And so when I sit down and I work with people, I'm able to help them understand, okay, what's the data we're looking at, what's the context, and what action do we need? And if they can give me the context and the action that they need people to take, then we can work with them to backtrack and fill in and say, what is the data that we need to be looking at? So all sorts of great things that you can pull together in a very simplistic way. And this formula is a great formula when you're trying to work with users and just say, how could I do this? Like, how can I pull together my content in a way that makes a lot of sense to my users and to my organization? And this is a great formula for doing that. But there's always a few things to remember. The first thing to remember is that the story you deliver to your organization is completely unique. So the context that you may be giving may be unique to your organization. What's right for you is going to be the classic "it depends" answer. And there's also many options. You can crawl, you can walk, you can run. And when we look at this crawling, this is really a webcast about the crawl phase, where we can go in and we can do very, very simple things with SharePoint. Walking is going to be doing some more advanced things. There's some things you can do with Excel services, even with Visio services. Then you've got running, you've got Power BI and amazing, incredible dashboards that you can build that show business data that allow drill downs, and you can have very, very complex solutions. And the solutions that you're going to need are really going to depend on your organization. And no two organizations are exactly the same. And so there's going to be differences in what you're trying to do within your organization. And so what's good to know is, like, you can know all of the different phases, you can know all of the different pieces, and then your solutions can grow as your organization grows. And you might be in an organization where you have got the most complex visualizations and reports and different things that we're doing. We have a lot of team members on our team that do a lot with reporting and very in-depth in details, and sometimes you need just a simpler solution. And so there's a place in the ecosystem for all of these types of solutions. And so just something to remember and to think about. We don't always have to go to the most high-end solution, but sometimes the low-end solutions are the easier, and the quick solutions won't match our needs. So it's important to understand that there's a lot of different ways to do it, and you just need to pick which solution is the best for you. Okay, so now we're going to go into several different dashboard examples. So when I start talking about dashboards and the different pieces that we have, I'm going to come over here now to our site and show you guys some of the dashboards that we have. Let's go back to the home page here. So I've got 3 different dashboards that I want to demo and work through in today's webcast. The very first one that we have is a task dashboard. And I'm going to open that up and show you guys. This is a dashboard that's meant to highlight and show us our tasks within a particular site. And so we see here that we have got a task dashboard here. We have our active tasks. We have overdue tasks. And so remember when I was talking about context, and that's where we want to know kind of the context of our data. Where do things lie? And so we see that I have a lot of very active tasks. Some of them were due quite a long time ago. We have our list of overdue tasks. We have tasks grouped together by phase. And so what that's going to do is show us, okay, how many tasks do I have in the requirements gathering phase, in the design phase, or the development phase? Then we can also see what tasks are due this week. So these are different components that by putting the content on the page, I'm able to give it context. Someone who is new to the project or maybe new to the team and doesn't know where everything's at is going to be able to log into this page, see this dashboard, and get a high-level summary of all of the components that have to do with this project. And so this is a great way to take the data that we have and go to take the data that we have, put it in some context, and then get them to do an action. And what's the action I want them to take? I want them to edit their tasks. And so when you come over here and look at this thing, overdue task, where do I put my edit button on the page? Where I want them to update their overdue task. And so it is very easy to come in here and edit an overdue task. You can click on it with one button and you're in it and you're ready to go. And so maybe I'll change okay, there we go. So I can change when it's due. I'm going to actually put this in to make this due much later. So you see I can go in and update and change my tasks directly there. And we see that it's just a quick and easy way to work with the site, and then I go back to the dashboards. So here we go, we're able to go ahead and make changes. I see a lot of comments in the questions window right now, so I'm going to go ahead and answer some of them. The first one is some people are having some issues joining. We had a technical issue, and so we're working through that, but yes, we will have a recording available. And the other one is that we have, by design, muted everyone. The only people that are unmuted right now are the presenters, so myself. So if you have any questions, you have to go ahead and ask them in the chat window. towards the end, we may open up audio, but we're having all of our questions done right now through the chat window. So I think that takes care of the few issues that keep popping up in the chat window. But if you have any more, just go ahead and send them, and I'll try to pop over and look at that at the same time. Okay, so here's going back to our dashboard. Going back to our task dashboard, we see that we've also got the timeline. And so what I want to do now is I want to jump in and start talking about the components that make up this dashboard. This is all built on one simple task list inside of SharePoint. And so what we have done is we have taken one task list, we've created multiple views so we can display the data, and then we've put web parts on side of a web part page and made it available as a dashboard to our site. And so that's one way of doing it. We have another dashboard that I want to show you guys, which is the same concept, but it's done with a document library. And so that's our document dashboard, and I'm going to pull that one up so you guys can see that as well. And our document dashboard, we have here, we have the My Documents, we have the last modified document, and documents by type. So it's the same concept that we had with the task list. It's showing a little different context. And so for this, I might have, you know, the project team documents, things that we're working on, and this is going to show the last modified. If I update a document or I update its metadata, this is going to change and show it. So let's say I came over here, and I went in immediately. I went into the properties, and I'm going to edit the properties. We're going to see that as soon as I edit the properties and save it, that this document is now going to be the one that is most recent. So let's say I put this and I associate it with project 3. I can come down here and save it. When we now go back to that dashboard page, we are going to see that the new item is showing up in the last modified document. So whichever document is going to be showing up there. We had another excellent question come into the chat window, and the question was, is this session for Office 365 Online specific, or does it work across all products? This is one of the few sessions that I give where I can say the concepts that I'm showing in this session work across SharePoint 2007, SharePoint 2010, SharePoint 2013, as well as Office 365. So there's very minimal differences between them, but it works across all of them, so you are able to use this no matter what version of SharePoint you are working with. Okay, so here is our project dashboard, like I said, for documents, and this shows us, you know, recent documents. We can also get documents by type, different components there. And then the last dashboard that I want to share with you guys is one where we take a concept of lookup columns, and when we show content across different list types. So what if I have tasks and I have documents associated with something? Can we show a way to group them all together? And so we have our project dashboard, and when I click on this one, you're going to see that we have different components available there. So we have different projects selected, and when I select a project, it shows me the summary, it shows me the project manager, it shows me any project documents that are associated with it or project tasks. And as I change through the different projects, I'm able to get an updated view based on that project. And so as I click through it, it's going to show me where I can pull in and see different data. So this gives me the context wrapped around that project. Now, that being said, this solution is only scalable to a certain point. If you had 200 projects, this solution would not work. And so it's something that you want to know and pay attention, but this is a great solution for. I've seen it used in several different scenarios where they have different projects and they want to show phases, or they have a different list for each project and they're mapping it up that way. So there's a lot of different ways you can take this concept and apply it to the different business scenarios that you're working in. So James had a great question in the chat window, and he said, can your, back to the documents one, can your last modified view show documents from more than one library? And so That brings up a great point of the scope of what we're doing here. And everything that we're showing here is limited to the scope of its own location. So if I'm working with a single list and I'm doing a web part for that list, it's just that list. And when I'm on a site, I can only access list within that site. So if I wanted to do anything beyond that and go outside of that scope, I would have to look at doing some things with custom search. So maybe using search to do that, or some custom roll-up components. So those are different ways that you can handle that scenario. Totally doable, but you just have to look at doing it a different way and kind of out of the scope of the simplicity of what we're showing here today in the webcast. Excellent question, though, and I'm very glad you brought that up when you did. Okay. So now going into it, we really just have to talk about a couple of different components that we have. We have got the list that we're working with. We have different views that we can create on the list, and then we take web parts and set them equal to those views and put them on a page. So the very first thing I want to jump in and talk about are the web parts, or sorry, the list views that we can create that we can use in web parts. So we're going to jump into the list views and work on going through those, look at the styles, different things that we can do to make those really pop and really shine and make them informative. So we're going to go back over here to our task list. And I'm going to just pull that up, and then we are going to walk through some of the different things you can do inside of a list with custom views. Okay, so we're going to go to our projects task list. Now, I said that all of this works in every version of SharePoint, but there are some subtle differences. Some of the subtle differences have to do with the task list. And in SharePoint 2013, we really did get a beautiful implementation of the task list. I'm so happy that it came about and it finally works in some really powerful ways. I think a lot of people had always hoped that what we get here is what the Gantt view should have been in previous versions of SharePoint. But what we have is we have what's called a timeline that's associated with every task list we create. So we create a new task list, we get our tasks, and then we get the timeline. The timeline sits above the task list, and we're also able to add it as a component when we add the task list to a page. It's a component of the web part. It allows us to come in here, and for any task that we have, for instance, when I click on the ellipse, I can either add it or remove it to the timeline. I happen to pick one that was already on the timeline, but I could remove it, or I could go to task 2 here, and I could say add to the timeline. And when I click that, and now I go back up and look at my timeline, it has adjusted, and I now have that extra task there. When I click on it, I'm able to, in the ribbon, I'm able to do a couple of different things. I can display it as a bar, and then I can go in and set a color. So maybe I want to set that to be a certain color. I could also come out and say display it as a call out. And if I display it as call out, it's going to come up here, and I can drag and drop it around the page. And so a lot of times what I've seen people do is they'll have a long task list with maybe group together tasks, some tasks, and different things like that, and they will add the milestones and the major tasks to the timeline so someone can pop right in and see a great view of the site. Where are we at with things? How are we going? What are our major dates that we're working on? I actually use that internal for some projects that we're working on so I can communicate to management what are some key dates of things that we will be getting done. And so I can do that with the quick, the timeline view. It's customizable in the fact that I can change the colors, and I can do different things that I haven't been able to do before. And it's also relative to the date. So if I add a task that's 3 years, it's going to adjust my timeline to show the appropriate date parameters, which is something that the Gantt view could never do. So this is also done in coordination with the project team. So if you have project on your machine, you are going to be able to open up the list in project and see the timeline there as well as all of your tasks. And so it's a super powerful feature of the 2013 task list. And so that's our timeline view. Very simplistic. We can look at it from that. We also have the task completion, and so just with the view here, we can click on a task and very quickly and easily mark it as done. Okay, so pretty simplistic things there, but I want to talk through how do we do things like build a view to show me just my tasks, or how do I build a view to show me what tasks are due next week, because these are the pieces of context that I want to show people when they land on my dashboard. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go to a whiteboard and I'll scribble out, or I'll use a tool called, the favorite tool I like to use is called Balsamic, and it's a quick wireframe tool, and I'll go in and say, okay, if I wanted to give them data plus context and an action, I'm going to map all of this out on a screen, and I'm going to map all of this out, get it set up the way that I want, and then from that I know what views I need to go create to work with. And so how I create views is I can simply come up to my ribbon, and I can come up, I can modify the view, or I can create a new view. I'm going to just click on modify the view here. And when I come in here, it's going to take me to all of the settings that I have for this particular view. There's a certain subset of settings that I'm sure everybody is used to working with, so we're not going to spend too much time there, but I do want to dig into some of the other views and other components of the views that maybe you haven't had a chance to play with. Okay, so starting out, we can pick what columns are going to be displayed and in what order. I'm pretty sure that everybody is very familiar with this piece of it. We can just go in and say, do I want to show field, do I not want to, and what order do I want to put it in. From there, we can say, how do we want to sort it? Again, something that I'm sure a lot of people are pretty familiar with. I can sort in ascending or descending order, and then I can do multiple sorts. So I can do 2 different criteria for sort. Filtering, there's some really good stuff you can do here with filtering. There's 2 pieces I want to show you about filtering just to make sure that you are familiar with them. The first one is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say where assigned to is equal to, and in brackets I'm going to put me. So I'm going to say where assigned to is equal to me. What this is going to do is it's going to return back in the view all of the tasks that are assigned to a person who's logged into the screen, so logged into the site. So I'm going to go to the site, it's going to show me my task. If Patrick Curran logs into the site, it's going to show Patrick his tasks. If Brittany logs into the site, it's going to show Brittany her tasks. And so me is one of those special filters that you can use inside of SharePoint that allows you to pick to the current user. So anywhere you have the people field, you can use this. So in a document library, we can say documents that were created or modified by me, and it will show for the person who logged into the site. So I'm going to come over here and just say OK, and we're going to see our updated view. It's going to take just a second. Okay, so now we look at this view, and we're only going to see tasks that are assigned to me. Okay, so that is one of the great filters that we can put inside of SharePoint. So I know a lot of people know about that, but I still run into scenarios where some people don't know about that. So it's always good to talk about it. So then we're going to go in and we're going to modify the view again. And the other one that I want to show you is another special filter that is called Today. Okay, and this one we can do where due date is equal to today. Okay, and that is going to take everything where the due date is equal to today. What's great about today is that this one is a mathematical operation, which means that I can do where due date is less than today, or let's just do where due date is greater than or equal to today, because I think that will give us a smaller list. We're going to come over here and click OK, and it is going to show us those with the due dates greater than or equal to today. Because it's mathematical, we can also take in the logic operations of and or. So we can say where it's greater than today minus 7 and less than, today minus 7 or today plus 7. So we can get it down to, let me show you the tasks that are just due in the next several days. Let me show you the tasks that are due in the next 7 days, because that's going to show me what's due in the next week. So it's a great way to kind of show that context to people, so we see all of the different tasks that we have here. This is also a good segue to talk about dates and something that they do inside of this version of SharePoint. So inside of 2013 and higher and Office 365, they have the concept of what's called the friendly date. And so when we look at that, we see that this says July of 2017. Well, that's in the next several months, so that makes sense. Notice that this says November 15th, and it doesn't even give me a year, and that's because November is considered far enough away. If I was to edit, actually let me edit this task here. Okay, so let me come over here and edit the item. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to edit the item, and I'm going to actually make this one due today. Okay, we're going to save that, and I just want to show you what happens with the friendly date. Notice that it says today now, and so it's going to go in with the dates and give me futuristic, like so tomorrow, yesterday, Tuesday, Monday, as well as July 15th, as well as November 15th, and so it's going to show me the dates based on where I'm at. Also, it's going to show me the date in red if the task is late. So if I was to make this task due yesterday, which can't do because then it would go out of the view, but if I was to make it say it was due yesterday, the date is actually going to show up in red. And when we look at the document dashboard that has, or excuse me, the task dashboard that has all of our tasks there, we'll see where it comes into red and where it's showing where tasks are late. And so that's all the process of working with the friendly date, and that's available inside of 2013 wherever data is used. It's actually very nice. I think it's a great feature that really aligns with natural language and how people work with the site and use it. And so I think it's a very, very powerful tool. Okay, so we have these different dates here. This is using the today filter. So I want to keep going down now with some of the other things inside of a list view that you may or may not be familiar with. So we're going to keep going and modifying the view, and the next collection of things we want to look at have to do with some of the styling. And I think styling is one of the most underused components of a SharePoint list. I think that we get through setting our grouping and our filtering and our sorting, and we get that done, and then we just leave everything else as the default. And so there's some really powerful ways that you can display data by just going in and changing the styles. So we're going to come down here. Now I'm going to go ahead and show all items in the list view just so I can make sure we see everything. We are going to go by styles now. So styles is where we're going to go in and change the way things look. Every list has got a default style associated with it. That's going to be how the list looks default all by itself. The other styles are things that you can change about the list. The thing to remember, though, is that a style is always applied last. And so what that means is that there's certain styles where some of the features, so grouping is a great example. So there's some different styles that don't support grouping. So if you go in and set your list up and say you have all this grouping and all of these settings done and you apply a style, the style will win. Meaning that if you selected a style that doesn't support grouping, you may go and say, hey, how did I get this? Why is this not showing up? All my list settings are there. Change it back to the default view and you should see all of your list settings. And so that just lets you know that some of the styles don't support some of the features. So I want to go through each one of these styles because I think it's really powerful to see them. So the first one I want to look at is a basic table. This is your most basic one, so I'm going to just say OK and save it. This is just going to be what a lot of the default lists are. When we go look at that, you're going to be like, Jen, this is so the same as everything I've ever seen. You are right on. It is. This is very much what a simple list looks like. So most list defaults, you'll come to them and the style will be set to basic table. It works okay for the most part, but when you have really long fields like this, it can get really difficult to read. So how many people have super, super wide long list or lists like this where you've got one really long column and it's great information, but how do you make that reasonably viewable so you can look at it great on the screen? I'm going to show you guys a trick in just a few minutes. Okay, so now we're going to go back into the list. We're going to modify the view. And the next component that we are going to show is going to be the boxed. Okay, so I'm going to come back down here to my styles. And we have two options, boxed, no labels, and boxed. So I'm going to show you guys boxed, no labels, and then I'll tell you what boxed is. So we're going to go over here and say OK now, and what you're going to see is our data is displayed in a completely different format. Now, this is one of those that when it works beautifully, and when it doesn't work, it's not going to work. But look how much better it is now to see my tasks. Now, if I didn't have a super long list, this is an excellent way to come in and see my tasks. So instead of seeing long columns and long rows, I'm able to visually separate into boxes where the content's at, and it's going to help me display a particular context. Maybe I want to highlight one task. Remember how I did on the document library where I said show me the most recently modified. I simply did a view with the boxed style and set the limit to 1 and sorted it by most recently modified. And that's how I'm able to get that view. That's how we're able to kind of pull all of those pieces together. This is boxed, no labels, meaning that there's no labels within the box. I could also do boxed with labels, which is going to show that, you know, title next to task 1 and due date next to the different dates. But because this is a SharePoint list, I can still filter on it just like I could other things. And so I can go in and filter on my task in this view, and it's just going to keep everything displayed in that box format, but it's going to put them in this really great format for me. And so this is a super, super powerful, tool for displaying data in your non-typical list and row format. So it's a super powerful way, I think, to do it. Okay, we're going to keep going now. There's a few more styles I want to show you guys. So we're going to go up. Okay, we're going to go in. Give it just a second. It's loading it. We're going to go into the list, and we are going to keep looking at some of the styles that we have. Okay, so we're going to come down here to the style. We are going to go to newsletter. So newsletter is what I like to tell everyone I think is the magic style. This is one of my favorite styles. I use this one everywhere. This one I like to call its magic because depending on the order that you put your columns, it's actually going to display things differently. So we're going to come over here to the newsletter, and we're going to say OK. Okay, and so now we come over here, and newsletter is going to show everything in a quick and easy blurb that is easily consumable. And so it is going to order my columns in a way that allows me to display the data the most visually appealing in a small little blurb. And so we see here I've got my columns across the top. I've got task name, start date, due date, and then description. And then under it, I have some additional fields. And remember how I said this particular one is magic, because if I was to go back into the same list and the only change I was to make the description go higher, I'm going to go modify the view. The newsletter style is going to readjust and still display it in a way that is visually appealing. So let's go in and try that really quick. So now we're going to come down here to description, and I'm going to make it display as like the second one. Okay, we're going to come down here and say okay. All right, so now when we get this to display, we see that instead of it displaying with all the columns across the top, it instead displays the text that's there with now all of my columns below it. And so if we wanted to go and quickly and easily show people just a more visually appealing way to look at the data, this is a great way to do it. And in addition to doing that, we can go modify the view . Let's go back in and modify the view here, where we can come down to the way that the counts and totals are done. So we can come down here to the item limit, and we can say display this in batches of 1. So maybe I want to display this just at one item at a time. And so if I come and do that, I'm giving myself basically a book of content. And so you can start to see how we can use views to help drive that context that we want people to go through. So now with my task list, I have this, and I can go to view my next task. And then what's going to happen after I go to 2, I get a previous, and I can have my next button. So I'm able to go through almost like a book of these tasks. And so again, these different views are going to be important for what you're doing, depending on what it is you're doing. And so these are great additions and styles and ways that you can work with and show your data. So some people have, think of it like a process book or something like that. I've got step 1, step 2, step 3. This is a great way to show the information in a way that's easily consumable, so you can drive this great user experience, again, using all of the features that are out of the box for people. Okay, so we have this in here, and so we've kind of talked through some of the different list styles. We have about 20 minutes left, and what I want to do now is talk about how do we get these on the page. So what we have there, I'm going to just come back and show you one of the pages. We simply go to the page, we add the web part, and set the web part to use whatever views we had created. So if I come over here to my task dashboard page, we're going to be able to just see that this is a simple SharePoint page. So this is a simple SharePoint page here, and if I come over here and I say edit the page, we're going to see that we have a web part page with many web parts and some text there. So one trick that I like to do is I like to hide the Chrome on all of my web parts and put in my own titles. And you may ask, well, what is the Chrome? For each one of these web parts that we have on the page, where it says Project Task 1, Project Task 3, those are the different web parts that I have on the page, and the Chrome is their title. And so you'll see what I did is I went in and I inserted an image, and I put text and put my own headers on top of the web parts. So starting out on the page, I'll do that to visually make things more appealing. I also like to do the styles that are part of the site. So I try to pick one style that's going to work really great with the site, and then I stick with it and make it consistent. And what that makes it look like is it's a very professionally done dashboard when really I'm just hiding the Chrome. And so when we go set the web part settings, we're going to go create one live now. You'll kind of see how that is working through the entire process. And so you see we've got 4 different web parts on the page, all using a different view. And then we've got text, and that's really the simplicity. That's the basis of this entire design. So I'm going to come over here to my gear, and I'm going to create add a page. So I'm going to say add a page. Yeah, so James asked, well, could you add a hyperlink in the text to actually open the list since the link is usually in the Chrome? And yes, you could completely do that. You could even put a, like maybe a little icon or in parentheses open list or something like that, but you could completely do something like this. So I'm going to do a page here called Webcast Demo. I'm going to create it. So pretty much anything you can do with the text you could do. So my page is going to come up now. And I can do a couple of things. I first probably want to come over here to my text layout and pick the one that makes the most sense based on what I'm going to be doing. And now I can come over here and I can add, you know, I might put tasks assigned to me. So that's just simple text. And I may come over here and say, let's do this with, you know, maybe a heading 2 because I don't want it too big. And now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to just say insert. I can do my at part since I know it's a list, and I'm going to find my projects task list. So I'm going to come over here to projects tasks and say add. Okay, so how many people have done this on a SharePoint site and then you immediately go in and enter the, or edit the web part properties, you hit save, and your web part has disappeared off the page? There's some bugs that they have with how references are done on the page, how GUIDs are assigned. So whenever you add a web part to a page, you want to hit save and keep editing to make sure that the GUID gets set so that when you go in and edit the properties, you don't run into any issues with disappearing web parts. So now that I've got my web part on here, I can simply come down here. And I'm going to say edit web part. Okay, I'm going to say edit web part. Okay, now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to be able to change what view I want. So task assigned to me, I can say my task. It's going to give me a message and say, hey, you're changing the view. Are you okay with that? And I'm going to say okay. So that's going to go there. Okay, so we have that there. I can also say, do I want a toolbar or not? So remember I talked about context and driving people to action. What if I just want to show them their task? I don't want them to create new tasks. Maybe I don't want them to edit it. So I may come over here and say no toolbar. And I don't really want to show the timeline here because I'm going to show the timeline once across the top of the screen. So I'm going to come down here and say apply. And I'm going to start to see that my changes are hitting the site. Okay, so now I see some of my changes are there, but maybe I also want to come over to layout. Okay, that's all fine. So under appearance, I want to go over and I want to set my Chrome type to none. And that's going to hide the web part Chrome. So I'm going to set that to none, and then we're going to say apply. Okay, and once that's done, we're going to see that we have got what is the start of a dashboard page. And we would simply repeat this process over and over again until we had all the web parts that we wanted on that page. So let's save the page here so we can see what the final product looks like. Okay, so we see that we've got the web part here with pieces we want. We can also go in and keep modifying and changing the view. There was a question in the box about how, in the question box about how can I recover a missing web part. And so if you do run into a scenario that I was talking about that the web part gets hidden, at the end of any web part page inside of SharePoint, you can type in question mark contents equals to 1 and hit OK. All right, yes, enter. And it is going to take you into what's called the web part maintenance page. And here is where you can see all of the web parts that are on the site. And if it says open on page is equal to no, those are sometimes your closed or your hidden web parts. It could say closed, it could say no. So you could come in and delete it from here, which would get rid of it. I've worked with some people where we've gone into sites and they've closed web parts instead of deleting them, and they still are loading on the page. And so this is where you can go in and clean up those pages to make sure that they're there. Someone asked if there's a GUI way to, if there's another way to do this, and no, there's no other way to access the web part page or the web part maintenance page. Okay, so that's how we have that. So we would just keep going through and adding web parts to the page. You can have an infinite number of web parts on the page. So we can come over here. I say infinite within reason. You wouldn't want hundreds of them for say on a page, but you can have multiple web parts on a page where we could come in and continue to add whatever text or fields that we've wanted to describe what web part we're adding. And then we come over here and say what web part we want to do. We'll come back to projects task, we'll get that, and then we'll just set the view that we want, and that's how we can go out and quickly and easily build these pages. Okay, so we're going to come over here and we're editing the web part. It's going to just take a few minutes to load that screen for me. Okay, and then we can come over here and change what view that we want. So any views that we had created and saved within the list, we can access here. So we could say maybe late tasks. And we can come over here and we can add that. We can put our different pieces, we can say apply, and then we're going to see that. So this is the process that we would do to create these simple dashboards. This is the exact process that I did creating the task dashboard and the document dashboard. So the exact same component. There's one last thing I want to talk about before we jump over to the connected web parts, where we look at connecting things across different lists within the same site. And that's, you might notice that one thing that's missing from my entire site is the quick launch. And something that is new with newer versions of SharePoint is this concept of changing the look. And so when you're on a SharePoint site, you come over here and you say change the look. It's going to take you to a screen that allows you to basically tweak the way that the site looks. Some people can go in and put like a custom theme or something like that in there, but there are a couple of really great options that you can do there. So I'm going to just click on my current one so it shows you what it looks like. And I want to talk about this one setting on the site. And it's called site layout. This is really great because you have two site layouts. You have Seattle and Oslo, and one can only guess that these were named after the teams that created them inside of Microsoft. They have a big team out in Oslo, so I'm assuming a Seattle team won and an Oslo team made one. I'm not quite sure. But Seattle is what you guys are most accustomed to in most cases. So if we're in Seattle, we have got a navigation across the top, and we have the quick launch navigation. If we change it to Oslo, which is what my site is, the quick launch moves to the main navigation, and all of this real estate is given back to you. And so if you want to have a site where you're using as much maximum display space as you can on your screen, you can set the setting here to Oslo, and it's going to take away the quick launch for you. And so it's going to move the quick launch to where the top navigation is. You still can use that to link to certain things, but it's going to give you more real estate on the screen to do different things with dashboards. And I do this to a lot of sites, excuse me, that I'm working with to make for a better, richer experience. So another little tip or trick to help you as you're looking at doing some of these. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go back to my site now. I'm not going to go ahead and save any of those changes, but back to my site. And the last piece I wanted to take the last couple of minutes and walk through with is the project dashboard. So I showed you how do I create list views and then how do I put them on a page. But what if I want to create a page that goes across both, that goes across maybe a document library and a task library? Well, the secret to doing that is what's called a lookup column. And so we have got 3 different lists that we're going to work with in our site. One is the projects list. And the projects list I'm going to show you guys is just a list of title of a project, the project manager, and a description. So I'm going to come over here and show you my projects list. I have 10 of them in there. So we have our projects list, and just like I said, it has just the title of the project, a description, and the project manager. So this is where I'm keeping the basic information about the project. I also have a project task list and a projects document list. So I'm going to come over here to my projects documents list. Let's start there. And inside of my projects documents list, I want to associate every document in this library with a project. And so whenever I put a new document in there, I want to say, well, what project am I associated with? So if I come over here and I look at the properties of this document, so I'm going to come over and look at the properties, we're going to see that I have a column called project, and we see project right here. It's going to take a couple minutes to load. And all of the entries for project here are from my project list. So I have that complete list of projects, and they're showing up as associations here. So we can cancel here. I'm going to go back to that list and show you how we set that up. Okay, so we're going to come over here to library. All right, we are going to go into library settings, and I'm going to show you that we have a column here called project, and it is a lookup column. So what we're basically saying is create a new column and have my choice selections be equal to the items in the list. So whenever I add a new item to that list, it becomes part of the drop-down of what I can do. So if you were to do that, you would go into your list and say create a column, create a new column. Okay, and you would select down here that you want type lookup. And when you come to lookup, it's going to ask you what list do you want to pull it from. So in our case, we want to pull it from the projects list, and then we want to pick the field that we want to come over. Okay, so projects and titles. So that's basically all that we're doing. We're going in and saying, hey, you have this list, you want to associate with another column, and so this is really our key that's going to make everything come together when we go to that web part page. So for every list that I want to associate through these connected web parts, I have to have a lookup column in it that points back to my master list so I can do the filtering on the list. Okay. So once that's done, I would go to my dashboard page, and for my web parts, when I go in and edit my web parts, there's actually a connection that I can do that allows me to do a connected web part and to associate the pieces so that I can say whenever someone selects an item in this list, filter it and show me this content. So we can come over here, and if I edit the web part, and once I'm in edit mode, I'm going to be able to come over here and see connections. And I can see with my connections that I can get filter values from the projects list. And so I basically edit the page, I put all of my web parts on the page, and I do this web part connection so that it says whenever I am here and I'm selecting a project, go ahead and filter the rest of the list. And so I can simply repeat that step over and over again, and it's going to give me those connected web parts so that I can show it. And so through this webcast, I know we're running really close on time and I want to be sensitive to that. Through this webcast, hopefully you guys have seen the power of what you can just do with simple lists and pages, so that you're able to take the simple list, make some good views with it, and then put the views on pages, and then even take it a step further and do connected web parts and web part pages. And so James asked, is linking available in SharePoint 2010 or is this just Office 365? It's available in 2010 as well through the lookup columns, so you can definitely do lookup columns and do the different connections. And so I'm going to hop over to the QA box, see if I can answer some additional questions. I hope you guys have found this pretty helpful today, and hopefully it gives you guys some ideas of different things that you guys can do. Okay. I think I have answered most of the questions that were in the box. So if there's any other questions, you guys can go ahead and send them this way. We have plenty of other webcasts that we keep doing inside of Planet. So you can pay attention to us on the Planet website to get access to those resources as well, and we want to continually keep bringing you these different types of webcasts. So I look forward to working with you guys again, and so we just really appreciate the time you guys have spent with us today. And come check us out on the Go Planet site, so go-planet.com, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for coming today.